Equity versus equality in a nutshell, day 1. Over the next 4 days, we're going to do a deep-ish dive into the definitions of equality and equity, and then we'll get into specific examples of what that looks like. So day 1, which is today, we're just going to look at the general definitions of equity and equality. Then on day 2, tomorrow, we are going to look at a very specific examples of how this shows up within the education system. Then day 3, we're going to look at very specific examples of how this shows up in the general workplace. And then on day 4, we're going to take an even deeper look at workplace culture and what helps to support or not support equity in the workplace and the differences between the two. So let's get started. Equity definition, equality definition. And because this is in a nutshell, we're going to try and keep this as brief, succinct as possible. So equality. Equality means giving everyone the exact same resources, the exact same treatment, assuming that we're all starting from the same place, that we all are at the same starting point. Let's get into a specific example. You have a 70-year-old, 250-pound bodybuilder. You have a 3-year-old child, and you have a 30-year-old sedentary office worker. Equality is, it's lunchtime, okay? And you give all of them the exact same meal. A bologna sandwich with some potato chips, a stick of celery, and a apple juice box. It's equal, but that sure as hell is not giving everybody the same needs, because I can guarantee you what a 3-year-old child's nutritional needs are is very different from that 250-pound, 70-year-old bodybuilder. So that's an example of equality. Yes, everybody is getting the same thing, but they're not starting from the same place. Now let's look at equity. Equity is giving everyone what they need dependent on their particular circumstances so that everyone can succeed and thrive, okay? So going back to that food example, you give the 250-pound bodybuilder who is prepping for a competition, okay, they need to be eating lots and lots and lots and lots of calories throughout the day, okay? The 3-year-old child, give them some, I don't know what 3-year-olds eat. Maybe the celery stick and a quarter of that sandwich, okay? And then the sedentary office worker, well, because they're not working out a lot, they're not very active, they're not going to be needing to eat as much as the bodybuilder. So equity is giving each of them what they need nutritionally for their lifestyle, okay? Putting into consideration their circumstances and specific factors so that each of them can thrive. Another example I love is track and field. So let's say there's a sprint that's about to start. You see that curved track? Have you noticed that when the athletes start, they're not all starting from the same blocks? The blocks are staggered, okay? It accounts for the fact that the person who's at the furthest edge of the circle is going to be having to run a bigger distance versus the person who's on the inside of the circle who has less of a distance to run. So they stagger the blocks to set it up so as much as possible, everyone can, I'm not an expert in track and field, but pretty much to level the playing field, all right? That's what equity does. Equity levels the playing field, so it will simulate equality as much as possible, but you can't get to equality just by giving everybody the same thing. Equity leads to equality with consistent practice and consistently giving the peoples what they need. All right, this video isn't as short as I wanted it to be, but we've covered what I wanted us to cover today. Definitions of equity, equality, come back tomorrow because we're going to take this into, I'm just looking at my notes, we're going to talk about very, very specific examples of how this shows up in the education system. All right. See you tomorrow.